Everyone in the bay saw it happen, and every single one of us was certain in that half-second that we were about to watch a human die. I need you to understand something before I tell you the rest. On my world, we have a saying. Roughly translated, it goes, "The young of a killer is still a killer, only smaller and hungrier." We say it to children. We say it to fools. We had been saying it in one form or another for 9,000 years. And then a soft, gray-haired human named Eli Marsh knelt down on a filthy quarantine floor and taught the whole galaxy that we'd had it wrong the entire time. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start where it started. My name is Vect. I am Dralen, if that means anything to you. We're the tall, thin ones with the double-jointed arms, the ones who work half the maintenance decks on every mid-rim station because we can fit our hands into places nobody else can reach. I was a coolant technician back then. Third shift. The shift nobody wants, on the deck nobody visits, in a station nobody remembers the name of unless their ship breaks down near it. The station was called HFY Relay. If you've never heard of it, don't feel bad. Nobody has. It sat out past the Corin Drift, one of those old refueling hubs that got built during the expansion and then slowly forgotten as the shipping lanes shifted. By the time I worked there, HFY was more rust than metal. Half the lights in the lower corridors flickered. The recyclers groaned all night like something was dying inside them. And the air, I remember the air always tasted faintly of copper and old smoke, no matter how many times they cycled it. But it was a job, and out past the drift a job is a job. There were maybe 200 of us living on HFY full-time. Dralen mostly, and a scattering of others. A few Threk dock workers with their heavy shoulders and slow, careful voices. A Corenti harbor master who never left her office. A family of Silu traders who ran the only decent food stall on the concourse. And then there were the humans. 3 of them, just 3. Now you have to understand what humans meant back then this far out. We knew of them the way you know of a storm on another continent. Distant, talked about, exaggerated. The galaxy had only met humanity a few generations before and the stories had already grown teeth. They came from a death world. They don't feel pain the way we do. They hunted apex predators for sport on foot before they even had proper weapons. They mourn things that aren't even their own kind. Some of it was true. A lot of it wasn't. But nobody out on the frontier had actually met enough humans to know the difference. So we filled in the gaps with fear, the way frightened people always do. 2 of HFY's humans kept to themselves. A married couple, dock engineers, quiet and tired-looking, the kind who did their work and went home and didn't make trouble. I barely spoke to them the whole time I was there. The third human was Eli Marsh. Eli was old. Not old the way we measure it, humans age fast and strange all at once, right there on the outside where you can see it. His hair had gone the color of station dust. His hands shook a little when he wasn't using them for something. He walked with a slight lean, like his spine had decided it was finished growing tall and had started growing sideways instead. He ran the waste reclamation deck, Deck 9, the lowest, wettest, worst-smelling deck on the whole station. Nobody wanted that job, and Eli had it because Eli was the kind of man who took the job nobody wanted and never once complained about it. I know because I worked the coolant lines that ran right past his deck, and I saw him more than I saw almost anyone. He talked to himself while he worked. Old human songs, half-hummed, the words worn down to nothing. He kept a little heater going by his workstation and a metal cup of something dark and bitter that he sipped all night. And he was kind in a way that used to confuse me because I couldn't figure out what he wanted in return. He'd leave scraps out for the ventilation rodents. He'd fix things on other decks that weren't his job and never mention it. Once, when a young Threk dockhand got his arm crushed in a loader and everyone else was panicking, it was Eli, old, slow, shaking Eli, who was already there with his shirt off and pressed against the wound, talking to the boy in that low, steady voice, keeping him alive until the medic came. I asked him once, weeks later, why he did things like that, why he bothered. He'd looked at me with those small dark eyes and thought about it a long time. Then he said, "Because somebody has to be the one who bothers Vect, and it might as well be the one nobody's expecting." I didn't understand it then. I understand it now. I've told you all this so that when I tell you the rest, you'll know that Eli Marsh was not a warrior. He was not a soldier. He was not one of those human commandos from the war stories, all muscle and cold eyes and impossible reflexes. He was an old man with a bad back and a metal cup of bitter drink, who cleaned the waste off the lowest deck of a station the galaxy had forgotten. That's what makes what happened matter. Now let me tell you about the Cub. It came in on the Marrow Wind. The Marrow Wind was a live cargo hauler, one of those grim, ugly ships that transported animals across the frontier. Sometimes legal cargo, often not. Hessam Relay didn't ask too many questions about the ships that docked there, because ships that docked there paid docking fees, and docking fees kept our lights on. It was the middle of my shift when the alarms started. Not the big alarms, the medical ones. The soft, urgent, pulsing kind that means someone is hurt, come quickly, come quietly. I remember I was elbow-deep in a coolant junction when they came over the deck comm, and I remember thinking, in that tired third-shift way, not my problem, someone else will handle it. Then the comm crackled again, and this time it was the harbormaster's voice, and she sounded scared. And the Correnti harbormaster was not a woman who got scared. "Containment breach on the Marrow Wind," she said. "Live specimen loose in the lower docking arm. All non-essential personnel clear Deck 9 and below. Repeat, clear Deck 9. Deck 9. Eli's deck. I don't know why I moved. I've asked myself that 1,000 times since. I wasn't security. I wasn't medical. I was a coolant tech with double-jointed arms and no business anywhere near a live specimen breach. Every rule and instinct I had told me to go up, toward the safe decks, toward the crowd already forming at the lifts. But I thought of the old man down there with his heater and his metal cup, humming his worn-out songs, and I went down instead. I've never been able to explain it. I think maybe it was the same thing Eli had, that thing where somebody has to be the one who bothers. I think maybe he'd been teaching it to me, without either of us noticing. By the time I reached the stairwell above Deck 9, there was already a crowd. Not a helping crowd, a watching crowd. That's the thing about a disaster, it draws people the way a wound draws flies. Dockhands, traders, a couple of off-duty security officers who should have known better, all of them jammed into the observation gantry that looked down over the reclamation floor, all of them staring at the same thing. I pushed through them. Being Draylen has its uses. We're narrow and we fold. I got to the railing and I looked down and I saw it. The Cub. Now, when the harbormaster had said live specimen, I'd imagined something small. Something you'd worry about the way you worry about a loose ventilation rodent. A nuisance. This was not a nuisance. It was a Carnith. I didn't know the name yet, I learned it later, but I knew what it was the moment I saw it. The way every creature in the galaxy knows a predator on sight in the old part of the brain that was frightened long before it could think. The Carnith come from Veshka Prime, one of the true death worlds, a place so hostile that even humans, I'm told, studied it from orbit and decided not to bother. The adults grow to the size of a cargo skiff. They hunt in silence. They have 6 limbs, all of which end in claws, and a jaw that unhinges. And they do not, this is the part everyone knows, they do not stop once they've started. This was a cub, a baby. It was barely the size of a Threk, which meant it was barely the size of a large human. It was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. It was pressed into the corner of the reclamation floor, all 6 limbs splayed, its dark hide slick and heaving. There was a wound along its flank, deep, ugly, still weeping, where something had gone wrong during transport. A restraint, maybe, a cargo hook, something cruel. Its eyes, and it had many, were rolling white and wild, and it was making a sound. I will never forget that sound. It was not a roar. It was not a hiss. It was a high, thin, cracking cry over and over, and even through my terror, even through 9,000 years of the young of a killer is still a killer, some ancient part of me recognized it. It was crying. It was hurt and alone, and it was crying, the way anything young cries when it's hurt and alone. And standing between that crying, wounded, panicking apex predator and the rest of us was Eli. He hadn't run. Everyone else had. The floor was a mess of dropped tools and abandoned carts where the reclamation workers had fled. The two dock engineers, the other humans, they were up on the gantry with the rest of the crowd. I saw them, the wife with her hand over her mouth. Everyone had run. Except Eli. He was standing maybe 15 paces from the cub, not close, but not far enough. Nowhere near far enough. He had his hands slightly raised, palms open, and his heater was still glowing where he'd left it, and his metal cup was tipped over on the floor with the dark drink spreading out from it, and he was just standing there, looking at it. The security officers on the gantry had their weapons out. I saw them. I saw the little red targeting lights blooming on the cub's dark hide, 3 of them, 4. I heard one of them say, low and tight, "Marsh, get clear. We can't get a shot with you down there. Get clear and we'll put it down." Put it down, I remember those words. So casual, so certain. The young of a killer is still a killer. And Eli, old Eli, shaking Eli, waist-deck Eli didn't move. He didn't even look up at them. He said, "You're not shooting a scared baby on my floor." There was a silence then. The kind of silence that has weight to it. 200 people held on the edge of something, and none of them breathing. The security officer tried again. "Marsh, that's a Carnith. You know what a Carnith does. You know what the adults do. That thing is going to gut you the second it." "It's hurt," Eli said, still not loud. Still that low, steady voice, the same one he'd used on the dying Threk boy, the same one he used humming his songs at night. "It's hurt and it's terrified and it's a baby, and I'm not going to stand here and let you shoot a hurt, terrified baby just because it's got claws. So you can all just wait. All of you, just wait a second." And then, in front of 200 watching people and 4 targeting lasers, and 1 wounded apex predator from a death world, Eli Marsh did the thing that none of us, not one of us in that entire station, would have ever in 1,000 years dreamed of doing. He knelt down. He got down onto his knees on that filthy floor, slow and careful, his old joints protesting, one hand braced against the deck to steady himself. He made himself small. He made himself low. He put his throat and his soft belly and everything vulnerable about him right out there in the open, right at the level of a predator that could cross 15 paces faster than any of us could scream. And he started to talk to it. I couldn't hear the words at first. They were too soft, but I could hear the shape of them, that low, rolling, up and down murmur, the sound you make to something small and frightened, the sound that doesn't need words because it isn't really made of words. It's made of something older than words. The cub's many eyes fixed on him. All of them. That awful crying sound caught in its throat and went quiet, and for one horrible moment the silence was worse, because a silent predator is a hunting predator, and every single one of us knew it. "Marsh," the security officer's voice was shaking now. "Marsh, please." Eli didn't stop. He shifted his weight just slightly, and he reached slowly, so slowly, the way you'd move if you were made of glass. He reached over and picked up his tipped-over metal cup. And he took what was left of the dark drink in it, and he set the cup down on the floor between himself and the cub gently and slid it forward a hand's width. An offering. A small, useless, human offering. "Here," the gesture said, "I have something. It's not much, but it's yours if you want it. I'm not going to hurt you." The cub watched the cup. It watched him, its flank heaved, the wound wept. And then it moved. I have never heard 200 people gasp at once before. It's a sound you feel in your chest. The cub leaped. It came off that corner in a single explosion of motion. All 6 limbs, faster than thought, faster than fear. A black streak across the reclamation floor straight at the kneeling old man. and I heard the security officer shout, and I saw the targeting lasers jerk, and somewhere behind me someone screamed, and I remember thinking with a terrible sick certainty, he's dead, the old man is dead, we're about to watch him die. And every one of us, every single soul on that gantry, in that half of a second, was absolutely certain we were about to see blood. The cub hit him. That's the part I have to say plainly because it's true, and because everyone who tells this story wrong skips it. It didn't stop short. It didn't slow down at the last moment like something in a children's tale. It hit Eli Marsh full force, all of that death world weight, and it drove the old man flat onto his back on that filthy floor. I heard the sound his body made when it landed, a dull, awful thud. I heard the security officer scream something that wasn't words. I saw the wife on the gantry sink straight down out of sight like her legs had stopped believing in her. And then nothing. No blood, no tearing, no scream. Nothing but that low, rolling murmur, still going, muffled now, coming from underneath. It took my mind a full second to understand what my eyes were showing me. I think everyone's did. 200 people leaning over that railing, all of us waiting for the red, and the red never came. The cub was on him. All 6 limbs, that unhinging jaw, that black slick hide draped over Eli Marsh like a collapsed tent. But it wasn't tearing at him. It had its huge blunt head pressed down against his chest, hard, the way a child presses its face into a parent when the world has gotten too loud. And it was making a new sound now. Not the high cracking cry from before. A lower one. A deep, broken, shuddering thing that rattled up out of its chest in waves. And underneath all of it, I could see one of Eli's old shaking hands come up, slow, careful, the way you'd move if you were made of glass, and settle on the back of that terrible skull. And pat it. Just pat it, the way you'd comfort anything, the way you'd comfort a frightened child in the dark. There, I heard him say. His voice was thin, the wind had been knocked out of him, the weight of the thing was crushing his old ribs. I found out later he cracked 2 of them, but he kept going. There now, you're all right, nobody's going to hurt you. There now, there. The cub had not attacked him. The cub had run to him. I've had a long time to think about why, and I've talked to people who understand the Carnith better than I ever will, and this is what I've come to believe. That baby had spent its whole short life in the hold of the marrow wind, in the dark, in restraints, hurt by hooks and hands, surrounded by nothing but fear and cruelty and the smell of other frightened animals. Every single creature it had ever known had brought it pain. And then it broke loose, and it was hurt and alone and dying on a strange cold floor, with weapons pointing at it and a crowd of predators watching from above. And one creature in that entire station did not point a weapon. One creature got low. One creature made itself soft and open and unthreatening, and made a sound that wasn't cruel, and offered it the only thing he had. The Carnith are apex predators. That's true. But being a predator doesn't mean you can't tell the difference between a threat and a mercy. Maybe it means you can tell better than the rest of us. Maybe when you've been prey your whole short life, you know exactly what safety feels like the first time you finally feel it. It didn't leap at Eli to kill him. It leaped at him because he was the first warm, safe thing it had ever found, and it was terrified, and it wanted to be held. The security officers didn't lower their weapons. Not right away. I don't blame them, honestly. Every instinct any of us had was still screaming. 9,000 years of the young of a killer is still a killer doesn't unclench in a single moment, even when the proof is right in front of your eyes. Marsh, the officer's voice came down shaky over the comm speaker. Marsh, are you, is it? Put the guns down. Eli's voice from under the cub muffled and strained. You're scaring it. Every one of you put them down. Slow. It can smell the fear coming off you. It's coming off you like smoke. Put them down. There was a pause, a long one. And then I watched it happen one by one. The little red targeting lights winked out. First one. Then another. Then the last. The officers lowered their weapons, and the tension in that bay let go all at once, and I heard, somewhere behind me, the wife on the gantry start to cry. Getting the cub off him was slow work. Eli wouldn't let anyone rush it. He wouldn't let anyone come down at all at first. He just lay there under all that weight, cracked ribs and all, and kept talking, kept patting, kept up that low, steady murmur, until the deep, broken shuddering in the cub's chest started to ease. Until its breathing slowed. Until, and I saw this, I was maybe 20 paces up and to the side, and I saw it clear as anything, until its many white rolling eyes started, one by one, to close. The baby fell asleep on him. On the waste deck floor of a forgotten station, wrapped around an old man it had known for 90 seconds, that death-world apex predator closed its eyes and went to sleep like it hadn't slept safe in its entire life. And maybe it hadn't. Eli kept patting it the whole time, long after it was asleep, long after the danger had passed. I think he'd forgotten we were even watching. The medics came for the cub first. Eli insisted. It first, then me, he said, and nobody argued with him, because at that point nobody in that station was going to argue with Eli Marsh about anything ever again. They sedated it properly, gently, with Eli's hand still on its skull, murmuring to it right up until the sedative took, and they cleaned and sealed that ugly wound on its flank, the one from the cargo hook. And only then, only once the cub was breathing easy on a med cart, did they let anyone touch Eli. 2 cracked ribs, a lot of bruising, a cut on the back of his head from where it hit the deck. For a human his age, it should have been worse. Humans, though, they're built out of that death world too, and the galaxy forgets it, and then the galaxy is reminded. He waved off the stretcher. Of course he did. He walked out of that bay on his own 2 feet, slow and leaning and shaking, one hand pressed to his side, and 200 people who'd come to watch a man die stood in absolute silence and watched him leave instead. Nobody clapped. It wasn't that kind of quiet. It was the other kind. The kind that happens when a whole crowd of people has just watched something rearrange what they thought they knew about the world, and none of them have the words yet. I was the only one who followed him. I caught him at the lift. He looked at me, those small dark eyes, that dust-colored hair, blood drying at his temple, and he gave me a tired little smile, like he'd been caught doing something foolish. "You came down," he said, "during I saw you push through." "I did." "Why?" And I realized I still didn't have an answer, not a good one. "I thought about you down there," I said finally. "Alone, and I don't know, somebody had to be the one who bothered. I thought it might as well be me." He laughed at that. It made him wince and grab his side, but he laughed, this raspy, delighted old man laugh, and he reached up and put one shaking hand on my shoulder. "Now you're getting it," he said. "They didn't sell the cub." That's the other part everyone gets wrong when they tell this story. They think it must have gone to some sanctuary far away, some clean and gentle ending. It didn't. The Marrow Wind filed a claim for it, live cargo, paid for, owed. And Hessam Relay, that rusted forgotten station that never asked ships too many questions, got asked one very hard question by a very old, very quiet human, and for once in its miserable existence, Hessam gave the right answer. The harbor master impounded the Marrow Wind on live cargo cruelty violations that everyone had always known about and always ignored. Turns out you can find the courage to enforce a law you've been ignoring for years, if the right person shames you into it just by kneeling on a floor. The cub stayed. It lived on Deck 9, Eli's deck. It grew, Deathworld things grow fast, and within a season it was the size of a skiff, this enormous 6-limbed apex predator padding around the lowest deck of the station, and every new dockhand who came aboard was warned about it in terrified whispers, and every one of them learned, same as I did, that it would follow that old man around like the world's most dangerous shadow, and lay its great head in his lap, while he hummed his worn-out songs and drank from his metal cup. He named it, of course he did. He named it Ash, for the color the drink left in the bottom of his cup, the color it had gone for that first offering on the floor. I asked him once if he wasn't afraid of it. It was fully grown by then. It could have unmade him in a heartbeat. He didn't even look up from what he was doing. "Vect," he said, "the day I'm afraid of something for being what it is instead of what it does, that's the day you should stop letting me near anything, including you." I left Hessam eventually. Most people do. Better work, warmer stations, closer to the core where the lights don't flicker and the air doesn't taste of copper. I've had a good life since. A long one by Draylen standards. But I've told this story on every deck I've worked, to every crew I've crewed with, in 100 galley messes across the midrim. And it never fails to do the same thing. The listeners lean in when I describe the leap. Every time, right at the part where the cub comes off the floor, I watch their faces go tight and certain. He's dead. The old man is dead. We're about to hear about the blood because they've all got their own version of the young of a killer is still a killer baked in 9,000 years deep, same as I did. And every time I get to watch it break in them, same as it broke in me. That's why I keep telling it. Not for Eli. Eli never wanted the telling, he'd have hated it. He'd have waved it off and gone back to his heater. I tell it for the leaning in and the breaking. I tell it because everyone in this galaxy has decided, somewhere along the line, what a certain kind of creature is, and they've stopped looking any closer than that. Eli looked closer. On a floor full of dropped tools with 4 guns pointed at him, and everyone he knew certain he was about to die, an old man with a bad back and a metal cup looked closer than any of us, and he was right, and we were wrong. The young of a killer is still a killer, we said. For 9,000 years we said it. But a scared baby is still a baby. In the whole wide galaxy, it took one soft, stubborn old human kneeling in the filth to be the first one brave enough, or maybe just kind enough to see it.